When talking about Genshin Impact, it is almost impossible to ignore the presence of Aether and Lumine, the starry-eyed and star-stricken travelers of Teyvat's story. Being the main characters, their impact on Genshin's tale is unmistakable. But in a colorful cast of characters, outrageous lore, and voiced dialogue, what else is there to say about them? What do we really know about the two travelers besides being silent characters that enjoy saying yes to every commission and job that Teyvat's citizens just always happen to be incapable of doing themselves? Good day. My name is Aster, and today we'll be studying Aether and Lumine's personalities, backstories, and other little hints about their true nature. If you like this kind of content, please consider subscribing. Also, comment below if you have any other characters you want me to make analysis videos on. The reason I wanted to make this video is because a lot of people actually say that the travelers are poorly written, when in reality, they're not. Their interactions with the cast are very vibrant, and with the hints in 1.4 and 1.5's Archon quests, it's clear that even as a player, we do not have omnipotence over Aether and Lumine's history. It has been hinted multiple times before that they are much, much older than they seem. So, I wanted to make a study of it. For the purposes of this video, we will be considering Aether as the main protagonist because he's technically the one with all the promotional art, and he's my chosen protagonist for Genshin, so Lumine will be our Abyss Sibling. However, both are just as vital to each other's story as the other, so please do not consider this as me dumbing down either of the characters. Everything I say about Aether could also be applied to Lumine narratively. I just really like Aether. Let's begin with the traveler's personality. A lot of people might actually chalk up Aether's personality as just a stand-in for the player, similar to how other silent protagonists are blank slates for the sake of the player's immersion. But we know that that isn't the case. A silent protagonist is not the same as a blank slate. Two very contrasting examples of this are Frisk from Undertale, whose main purpose is to be a narrative tool for crafting Undertale's morality system, and Joker from Persona 5, who, despite not being voiced, has a clear personality based on the actions he takes and how his dialogue options are created. So, which one is a traveler? Throughout the narrative of Genshin Impact, we see a lot of snippets of Aether's personality. From the very beginning, he is selfless and hardworking for those that he cares about. He often takes commissions every day from the Adventurers Guild while at the same time helping the Liyue Qixing and the Knights of Avonias with their own handful of works. It is also seen with how he interacts with people that he is easy to assist those he has never met before. A very notable example of this was in Albedo's story quest, where Aether agrees to go south to meet someone named Albedo. This also leads me to another character trait: reckless and curious. Let's begin with reckless. As an adventurer, it is normal to seek the thrill of a high-risk, high-reward. That's why Aether goes to domains, seeks out monsters, and fights on a daily basis. However, when I say reckless, I mean to say that he also has very little regard for his own safety, even when the reward itself is just a gamble. Let's reflect on Aether's actions in Albedo's story quest because out of all of the others, this stands out just for how little regard Aether actually has for his own safety. This characteristic of Aether shined the brightest in this story quest when you observe how it actually plays out. Aether has never met either Sucrose or Albedo in his entire life, only being known through mere coincidence of being the honorary knight. Next is that Aether willingly agrees to assist the stranger in climbing one of the coldest, harshest, and deadliest terrains known to Teyvat, Dragonspine. Essentially, he is risking his own life to meet this person who he has never seen before, which in all things considered, is dangerous. This narrative would have been very different if he was rescuing someone in mortal danger, or even just meeting someone he already has close ties with like Venti or Kaya. But no, he's accepting a stranger's request to go through the harshest snows to have ever existed to meet another stranger, just because the other stranger was kind of sad. Okay, but that could be similar to Gan Yu's story. Well, not exactly. Mind you, we have never interacted with Albedo before in the story, unlike all the other 5 stars. And what is more peculiar about the story quest is that the other stranger is said to be a very risky individual, as noted by Rosaria's dialogue of Albedo. She is wary and expects the traveler to share her suspicions. She deems him a dangerous individual, and that is the first time we hear another character in cutscene talk about how dangerous another character is. Even Zhao is not spoken of in this light, instead praised by Ganyu, Zhongli, and even Tartaglia. This should have set off red flags, but it doesn't, and Aether instead opts to follow through with his plan of helping Sucrose. However, this does not stop there. As we know in the story quest, Albedo is a very shady character. Though his reputation of being the chief alchemist is commendable, we have to understand that he's basically a scientist who willingly put himself in isolation, away from the scrying eyes of authority and by extension, laws and safety protocols, to pursue a cursed weapon and its origin which had the potential of cursing its wielder. Yeah, but Aether still helps him, and even puts himself willingly in danger for the sake of Albedo's research on him. He glides across the winds of Mondstadt, he drank a mysterious potion without precaution and Albedo's disregard of telling him its effects. He fought stragglers with a cursed weapon for Albedo. And that's what brings me to my next point. Because even though Aether has been reckless, his relationship with Albedo is actually quite mutual, despite seeming like Albedo is taking advantage of his kindness. The entire time, we know that Aether is curious about who he is. What difference does he have anatomically with the people in Teyvat? Who is Paimon, and is she a potential source of his power, or a potential limitation of his power? What is the limitations of his body in terms of the elemental blessings gifted to him by the Archons? Aether is interested in the knowledge that Albedo could provide. And throughout the lore, we know that Aether is a very curious individual. He is a traveler. Most of his dialogue options are questions to the people, and it's very indicative of what kind of character he is. He seeks out strangers because they are potential sources of knowledge for him, and he goes to places because he wants to learn and experience Teyvat. When he first came to this world, the first thing he did was ask. He was never a passive person, always active and looking for information. His goal in the beginning was asking about his sister, and though his motivation has changed, his methods stay the same. He asked Venti about the 7 Archons which led him to Liyue. He questioned Zhongli's motivations for working with the Fatui. He asks Albedo about findings the alchemist has of his origins. He talks to his companions about their lives and how they go about Teyvat every day in order to learn more of his culture and history. He participates in festivals, customs, and even rituals in Teyvat to integrate himself into history despite being an outlander. And he openly reads books and did his research on Conria in the sidelines. Aether is naturally curious. A reason why I also said that his friendship with Albedo is mutual and not parasitic is because Aether himself is not a pushover. Though he helps everyone every day with the most mundane of tasks, he and Paimon are very straightforward when they feel like someone's bullshitting them. Paimon and Aether have a form of street wisdom from their time adventuring that no other character can replicate. Most of the time, he gives others the benefit of the doubt, like how he gave Tartaglia the benefit of the doubt despite being a Fatui harbinger, but there are a number of times where his own street smarts shine the brightest. Here are just a few examples. Zhongli's more a situation where he tells Zhongli how Mora works despite being an outlander, Zhao's people situation with mortals, Xingqiu's story quest where he calls out that he's doing all the work while Xingqiu's is reading a book, Bennett's story quest where he openly calls out Royce's bullshit, Chongyun's story quest where he openly calls out a scam, Tartaglia's story quest where he is aware that the brothers are conspiring against him, Venti's 1.4 story quest where he makes note of Venti's alcoholism, Yanfei's story quest where he and Paimon acknowledge that they're just going to be asked for help in one sentence sooner or later, and many, many more. Where he lacks historical intelligence, he makes up for in awareness and wisdom. Another good way of seeing who he is as a character is how he interacts with other people. Aether is extroverted and is an amazing conversationalist. In all things considered, he's a very well-rounded, optimistic, and communicative person. The plethora of personalities that he talks to daily just shows how charismatic he actually is. Extroversion does not equate to good communication skills, but it's safe to say that Aether is not part of that equation. He is able to befriend and convince certain people to go with him. by lore, each character in your party is taking time out of their day to assist you. Let's also use the other characters as analysis points to connect their interactions with Aether. Each character clearly has preference on who they deem as their friend, so we can reflect on this. Characters like Zhongli, Xingqiu, Lisa, Sucrose, Yanfei, and Mona heartily provide him with factual and historical information about the world because of his curious personality, noting that he is a good student of some sort. Beidou, Rosaria, Xiangling, Keqing, Ningguang, Ganyu, Qiqi, and Jin appreciate a hard worker and a reliable person to take care of them and their work. Amber, Kaya, Venti, Hutao, Xinyan, and Kli like those that they can have fun with and are easy to bounce off of in terms of energy and mischief. Eula, Barbara, Official Diona, Noelle, Diluc, Bennett, and Chongyun need good listeners because of their own personal problems, and gravitate towards Aether's patient nature of listening to their troubles. Kazuha, Razor, and Albedo are interested in Aether because he is different from anyone that they have ever seen before, as well as because of his outsider perspective that not a lot of people could provide. Tertalia enjoys his company because Aether is a family man who also has his sibling to protect, as well as a remarkable fighter who does not back down despite the odds being stacked against his favor. Zhao, though reluctant, finds a friend who is accepting of his heavy karmic debt and enjoys Aether's company because he is forgiving and non-judgmental of his character. Just seeing what kind of friends Aether has made along the way through the playable characters is very telling of his personality, especially when characters in the roster have openly disliked working with others for personal reasons, namely Xiao, Albedo, Diluc, Eula, and Rosaria. The reason why I think that Aether is a very well-written character is because we actually see why the other characters like him through the dialogue options he has and what he does in the story. Here are just a few examples. He jokes around with Kaya and Venti but doesn't disregard their secretive nature during the Devalin arcs. He listens heavily when he needs to but steps in when the situation calls for a more vocal and honest opinion, like in Bennett and Chongyun's dilemma. He never dismisses Fischl's acts in any of his dialogue options. He expresses great care in indulging the younger characters in games and tricks like in 1.5 story event with Klee. He reflects on Albedo's questions in his story quest and shows a great appreciation for Albedo's craft and handiwork. He gives Zhao the personal space he asks for when Zhao states his discomfort in coming with him to the Lantern Rite, despite Aether's best efforts. And he respects Zhongli's contract to Celestia despite spending months finding his sister and Conria. And how can we forget that Aether has a smug personality to him? No wonder Venti likes this guy. So that's a good rundown of Aether. But what about Lumine? Well, let's talk about the Abyss Sibling. We have to understand that the Abyss Sibling has been through a lot of trauma, as seen by Lumine when she first woke up alone during the climax of the Archon War. Fear, paranoia, and especially loneliness does something to a person. Lumine was a character that existed with her brother, similar to Aether, and this is the first time while traveling through different worlds that she's alone. But we need to understand that from her point of view, she was in a very different situation that will have morphed her perceptions. Unlike Aether's giddy, excitable, and cheerful Paimon, Lumine's traveling partner was Dainsleif, who had also recently witnessed the massacre of his home nation. Lumine was also in a time of tribulation and war, so the friendly and caring atmosphere that Aether knew Teyvat had was almost impossible for her to even fathom. It's almost apparent when we hear how coldly she regards Teyvat, despite us seeing it as a bright and colorful place. So that should give us more perspective on Lumine. So let's begin. Lumine, like her brother, is a hard worker. Her hard work, however, did not come from commissions or jobs. Her hard work most likely comes from survival. At the time of war, it was probably her best priority to understand the more violent and dangerous side of Teyvat for her own survival. She most likely had to go through her own mission of the Seven to regain the power she had lost, which is why in the story, we see Lumine with her own moon sword. We can also make an educated guess that the Lumine we meet has near access to her power, unlike Aether due to her travels. We know that just like her brother, she is willing to go the extra mile. She led the Abyss and revived the nation that was deemed abandoned by the gods. We also know that in the main story, the Abyss is a very active threat to Teyvat's peace, as hinted by Diluc, who has a long-standing animosity with the mages. Lumine is curious. We do not know much about her own reckless behaviors as a leader, or even as a traveler on that, but we do know that information for the twins is as essential as the food they eat every day. As an outlander, knowing everything is key to survival, and Lumine makes sure her underlings can gather as much information as they can about the enemies she has every day. We see this when the Abyss Mages report their findings of her brother to her, or when the Abyss Herald restrains and locates the different deities of Mondstadt for her mission. Another good note to point out is Lumine has knowledge of how to operate the Ruin Hunters and Ruin Guards. She also has extensive knowledge of how to tap into a Statue of the Seven's elemental power and blessing for her own purposes. Needless to say, Lumine is intelligent. Her ability most likely bypasses Albedo and Lisa's knowledge of Teyvat, as she has centuries worth of personal experience over them. This ties in with Lumine being as wise as her brother. Lumine is also very charismatic. Like her brother, she has a plethora of creatures at her disposal. She's a leader, and a good one at that. The heralds, lectors, and mages clearly show immense respect for her. And I also believe that since they are sentient beings and they are capable of common knowledge, their consciousness has not fully dissipated and therefore almost akin to human devotion. Lumine is able to command these creatures to her will. So, now we understand just a little bit more about the twins. This video has gotten a little longer than I thought it would, so we'll be cutting this into another part. For the next video, we will be talking about how strong the twins are in character lore, because in all things considered, they are currently the strongest beings that roam Teyvat, despite only being a 5-star character. With that, I hope to see you in the next video in this 3-parter series with the Teyvat twins. This is turning out to be a 3-page script, so I do hope in the future... Okay, never mind, scratch that, it's a 6-parter script. Okay, I have to go. But anyways, my name is Aster, and thanks for studying with me.